Imagine a post-apocalyptic wasteland straight out of Mad Max. Out of the blinding haze, a monster emerges. It stands a towering 7 feet tall at the shoulder. It weighs over 2,000 pounds. It has the muscle-bound hump of a bison, the impossibly slender legs of a racehorse, and a massive head the size of a motorcycle. You are not looking at a Hollywood monster. You are looking at a real flesh and blood creature that actually walked the earth. Paleontologists formally call them Entelodonts, but absolutely everyone else, well, they call them a much more terrifying, fitting name. Hell pigs, or if you prefer a sci-fi twist, Terminator pigs. Okay, so if you're sitting there thinking this is just some oversized prehistoric farm animal, you are dead wrong. This was a heavily armored, bone-crushing, face-biting psychopath. It was a creature that absolutely dominated the Northern Hemisphere for over 20 million years. Today, you are going to find out exactly why this unstoppable beast was the undisputed tyrant of the ancient Badlands. Forget everything you think you know about nature. The hell pig was a biological Frankenstein's monster. It was seemingly assembled from the most terrifying traits of completely unrelated predators. When scientists first dug up its skull in the Badlands, they could not even comprehend what they were looking at. The skull alone was 3 feet long. That's the exact size of a fully grown man's torso, just for the head. Yeah. And sprouting directly from the cheekbones were massive, flared, bony spikes that looked like a nightmarish, armored mustache. Why did it have these bizarre spikes? What possible evolutionary purpose could require a face covered in bone-deep armor plating? Well, hold on to that question. The answer involves a level of prehistoric, blood-soaked violence that is genuinely unsettling. Let us start with the name, Entelodont. It sounds kinda clinical, it sounds highly scientific and safe. But the largest, most famous, and most lethal of these creatures was given a scientific name that perfectly translates its horrifying reality. Daeodon. In ancient Greek, that directly translates to dreadful teeth. And dreadful they were. When you look at the fossilized teeth of a Daeodon, you do not just see the flat, grinding molars of a peaceful herbivore. You see massive, thick, bone-shattering canines. You see front incisors that angle forward and interlock perfectly like a steel bear trap. They were specifically designed by evolution to grip, tear, and rip raw flesh straight from the bone. The bite force of this animal was astronomically high. It could chomp down with significantly more pressure than a modern saltwater crocodile or an angry hippopotamus. When a hell pig bit into something, it did not just cleanly pierce the skin though. It shattered the entire skeletal structure of its victim into a million pieces. Here is the most mind-bending twist about the Terminator Pig. Despite the terrifying name, despite the bulky appearance, and despite the very ominous pig-like snout, it was not a pig at all. Modern science has completely rewritten the history books on this animal. Using comparative anatomy and phylogenetic analyses of fossil traits, researchers have placed Entelodonts on a completely different branch of the evolutionary tree. Its closest living relatives are not actually pigs, wild boars, or warthogs. They are actually hippopotamuses and whales. The hell pig was essentially a giant carnivorous land-running hippo on stilts. If you know anything at all about modern hippos, you know they are some of the most aggressive, deadly animals on the entire planet. Now take that territorial aggression, put it on athletic legs strictly designed for a high-speed sprinting, give it the ravenous appetite of an apex scavenger, and you now have a recipe for an absolute biological nightmare. How exactly did this land hippo operate in the wild? Well, Picture the North American plains roughly 30 million years ago. It is an ecosystem in a violent transition. The world is moving from the hot, swampy jungles of the Eocene epoch into the cooler, drier Oligocene epoch. Dense forests are shrinking, wide-open grasslands are expanding. Survival is becoming a vicious daily war. The hell pig did not just survive in this hostile new environment, it aggressively thrived. It was the ultimate unstoppable opportunist. Paleontologists have closely studied the microscopic wear patterns on the fossilized Entelodont teeth, and what they found is truly fascinating. These massive animals were true omnivores. That means they ate absolutely anything they wanted, whenever they wanted. Thick roots, tough tubers, hard nuts, rotting fruit. If it was edible, it went down the hatch. They would use their broad, flat snouts to literally tear up the earth, destroying vegetation and uprooting entire landscapes just to find a quick underground meal. Now, do not let the plant diet fool you for a single second. They had a serious taste for fresh meat, and they had the perfect anatomical tools to get it. There is actual, physical fossil evidence of a massive entelodont tooth embedded deep inside the skull of a prehistoric rhino relative. This was not a warning bite. This was not a defensive snap. This was an active, violent, predatory strike intended to kill on the spot. But the hell pig did not always have to do the dirty, exhausting work itself. It was arguably the greatest and most intimidating bully of the ancient world. Imagine a pack of ancient hyenodons. These were highly lethal, wolf-like predators that roamed the ancient plains in groups. They have just taken down a large, struggling prey animal. They're bleeding, panting, and finally ready to eat their hard-earned meal. But suddenly, the ground begins to physically shake. A 2,000-pound Daeodon steps out of the brush. It does not roar, it does not need to make a sound. It simply opens its massive jaws a full 90 degrees, displaying its dreadful, blood-stained teeth, and charges forward. The hyenodons scatter immediately. They know they absolutely cannot win a fight against a walking tank. The hell pig ruthlessly claims the carcass for itself. It does not just eat the soft meat. Modern scavengers usually leave the heavy, thick bones behind because they're entirely too hard to break. But the hell pig ate the bones too. Its jaw muscles, heavily anchored by those bizarre bony cheek flanges we mentioned earlier, were so immensely powerful that it could crush thick femurs into tiny splinters. It would extract the nutrient-rich marrow inside with zero effort. It was a walking, breathing waste disposal unit that left absolutely nothing but a white dust in its wake. Now, simply stealing food was likely not enough for this monster. There is dark, highly unsettling physical evidence suggesting that hell pigs were actively decapitating their prey. In the badlands of Wyoming, researchers have uncovered what they clinically call meat caches. These are dense collections of fossilized bones that appear to have been intentionally, systematically hoarded in one specific location. The deep bite marks on these bones perfectly match the jaw dimensions and tooth spacing of the hell pig. The evidence strongly suggests that these creatures would literally bite the heads off their victims. They would toss the useless skull aside so they could drag the much meatier articulated rear halves of the bodies back to their hidden stashes. You are dealing with an animal that stockpiled headless corpses. I mean, if this sounds like a creature that feared absolutely nothing, you are mostly right. There was only one thing on the entire planet that a hell pig was truly afraid of, and that's another hell pig. Remember those bizarre bony spikes aggressively protruding from their faces? Well, for decades, scientists actively debated their actual evolutionary purpose. Were they just extra surface area for massive jaw muscle attachments? Were they just for intimidating sexual display during mating season? Then they started finding the damaged skulls. Numerous Entelodont skulls have been pulled from the earth, bearing horrific scars. We're talking about deep, jagged puncture wounds and healed over scratches measuring up to 2 centimeters deep, dug directly into the solid bone. These were not just random injuries from a clumsy accident. They were concentrated directly on the face, the snout, and right around the delicate eyes. The hell pigs were actively fighting each other. They were doing it by savagely, repeatedly biting each other right in the face. Just think about the sheer violence of that interaction. 2 massive bison-sized land hippos standing aggressively face to face. They angrily open their jaws to that impossible 90-degree angle, locking their massive mouths together in a brutal, prehistoric, high-stakes jaw wrestling match. They would violently thrash, bite, and gouge with thousands of pounds of crushing force. This is exactly where the bony facial armor finally came into play. Those thick knobs and flared flanges acted as built-in biological shield plates. Without them, a rival's massive teeth would have easily pierced the thin brain cavity or ripped out the eyes entirely. Instead, the lethal teeth scraped harmlessly against the thick, heavily calloused skin and solid bone armor. It was likely a life of constant, brutal, unforgiving warfare. You had to be a total psychopath just to survive a single day. You had to be willing to crush solid bone, steal food from packs of killers, hoard headless corpses, and literally take a 3-foot jaw full of dreadful teeth to the face just to defend your hard-earned territory. To understand just how relentless and calculating these animals really were, we have to look closely at their tracking behavior. In the dusty badlands of Nebraska, paleontologists found a set of fossilized footprints that tell a truly chilling, terrifying story. The ancient tracks clearly show a hell pig following a prehistoric, heavily armored rhinoceros. The hell pig was not just walking in a lazy straight line, it was walking in a highly deliberate, calculated zigzag pattern. Now, why is that important? Because a zigzag pattern is exactly how modern predators use their sense of smell to track prey over long distances. The Terminator pig was actively, patiently hunting. It was sniffing the air, locking onto that scent of the rhino, and carefully plotting its violent attack. Some researchers even believe the hell pig was patiently waiting for another, faster predator to attack the rhino first. It was waiting for the absolute perfect moment to aggressively rush in, violently steal the fresh kill, and ruthlessly crush whatever got in its way. It possessed a level of cold, calculating predatory intelligence that would have made it even more dangerous than its sheer size suggested. For over 20 million years, this brutal, psychopathic strategy would have worked flawlessly. The hell pigs rapidly spread across Asia, Europe, and North America. They violently conquered every ecosystem that they entered. They grew larger and larger with every passing million years. The earliest Entelodonts were roughly the size of a medium dog, but by the time the mighty Daeodon walked the earth during the Miocene epoch, it was tall enough to look a fully grown human man right in the eye. They seemed invincible, an evolutionary masterpiece of pure aggression. But where are they now? Why is a massive Terminator pig not roaming the modern wilderness today? Well, to defeat a monster, you must change the rules of the game. Roughly 16 million years ago, the Earth did exactly that. The global climate began a drastic, totally unforgiving shift. The lush, warm, heavily forested environments that the hell pigs had dominated for millions of years started to cool and dry out rapidly. The dense woodlands and heavily vegetated floodplains, where an ambush predator could easily hide its massive body, began to vanish entirely. In their place, endless, wide-open, completely exposed grasslands took over the continent. In a dense forest, a hell pig could explosively charge out of the underbrush and shatter a prey animal before it even knew what hit it. On the flat, open plains, there was absolutely nowhere to hide. Prey animals began to rapidly adapt to the new, exposed world. They evolved much longer legs. They became significantly faster, lighter, and much more agile. Early horses and ancient long-legged camels could now spot a massive 2,000-pound predator from over a mile away and simply outrun it with absolute ease. The Terminator Pig was fast, but it was not built for a sustained marathon sprint. Its slender legs were built for a short burst of speed, but its bulky body required a colossal amount of calories to fuel. Suddenly, the food was running away much faster than the hell pig could ever hope to chase it. Climate change was absolutely not the only nail in the coffin, though. A brand new kind of killer was crossing over the land bridges from Asia, and it was hungry. They are scientifically known as the amphicyonids. They are better known by their terrifying nickname, the bear dogs. Imagine a predator with the heavy, muscular body of a grizzly bear, but the head and highly lethal hunting instincts of a timber wolf. These were highly intelligent, incredibly fast, and ruthlessly organized pack predators. As the bear dogs rapidly poured into North America, they disrupted and destroyed the hell pig's ancient, long-standing monopoly. If a hell pig tried to violently bully a solitary bear dog off a fresh carcass, it might just still win. Brute force goes a very long way in the wild. But bear dogs operated with highly superior pack dynamics and much more advanced social intelligence. They could easily coordinate complex attacks. They could surround a massive target from all sides. They were the brand new apex predators, perfectly designed from the ground up for the rapidly changing open plains environment. The mighty hell pig, an animal built purely for solitary brute force intimidation and close quarters ambush, suddenly found itself outsmarted, outrun, and hopelessly outgunned. The entire environment had aggressively turned against it, and the new competition was utterly overwhelming. Slowly, the population dwindled. The massive calories required to maintain this monstrous size became mathematically impossible to find. The bone-crushing jaws, the terrifying facial bone armor, the aggressive pack-hoarding behaviors, the highly intelligent zigzag tracking, absolutely none of it mattered against a rapidly changing climate and a much faster, significantly smarter rival. They were a violent relic of a forgotten, brutal age, entirely unequipped to survive the dawn of a fast-paced new era. So, around 16 million years ago, the last Daeodons collapsed in the dry dust of the expanding grasslands. The 20 million year reign of the Terminator Pig was officially over, and the bloodline of the Hell Pig was erased from the earth forever. But hey, I'll catch you next time.